with Laurinaitis. I'll say it with Vince. I'll say it with Chris Jericho, that stuff. Bro, unless you were in the room and you saw it, you don't know. Mm-hmm. Period. You could want to believe it, bro. You could hope somebody rots in, hell. Unless you've seen it with your own two eyes, you don't know.
Vince Russo, your thoughts on Laurinaitis coming out. Now, of course, Laurinaitis knows so much of what happened over the past 15 years in the WWE. This is the first order of business spilling the tea, man. What do you think?
Bro, it's interesting because, Laurinaitis' lawyer said that Johnny Laurinaitis was a victim.
Yes.
Okay, well, that means he was a victim to Vince McMahon. Mm-hmm. That means in his position, he felt somehow, some way that he had to do whatever Vince McMahon asked him to do. So how do we know, bro, Johnny Laurinaitis doesn't have text messages of Vince McMahon saying, I want you to do this and I want you to do that? And, bro, let me tell you something, man. If people are looking at jail time, bro, they're selling people down the road. Hey, bro, go watch The Sopranos, bro. Go watch The Sopranos when somebody's threatened jail time, bro, and they start singing like a canary. And I didn't expect it to come this soon, bro. Yeah. But to go right to that Ashley Mazzaro thing, like he didn't waste any time, bro.
Yeah, right. I mean, EC3, what do you think of this, man?
Well, you know what? They're just polishing brass on the Titanic, and it's all going down, isn't it? So, I know no real details of these allegations, short of what we saw in the email. But I do know that as long as I can remember, from the first day I walked into a developmental territory, there was a saying in the locker room, why is so-and-so here? Like, what value does this person have? What? They know where the bodies are buried, was always the answer.
Yeah.
Because now the bodies are being exhumed.
Yep. Yeah. So Teddy Long has been vocal about his thoughts on John Laurinaitis. Teddy Long also works here at Sportskeeda as a
player. What do you have to say?
As a player analyst here. And so, so here's the thing. Both of you, specifically you, especially you, EC3, have had dealings with John Laurinaitis, with people power. And so Teddy Long was very vocal about his experience with John Laurinaitis. And we know that EC3 doesn't hold any dirt when it comes to his thoughts on wrestling talent. We've had that experience before. So now John Laurinaitis is on the table. He's in the hot seat as far as you letting us know your particular experience with John Laurinaitis. What say ye, East?
In theory, John Laurinaitis is probably the person responsible for signing me. But at the same time, it was kind of like a signing that was made by a subordinate at the time. So coming up through developmental, I didn't really have a lot of dealings with him. He kind of if you weren't completely right on the radar, ready for TV, you were kind of insignificant and nothing. So I would say we've had professional chats. Anytime I got fired, it wasn't him that did the calling. Hey kid, I got some bad news for you. Thank God.
Was that Carano?
What's that?
Was that Carano doing that?
Carano, and then who was an idiot beforehand when I was in NXT the first time? Some jacko. Canyon Seaman.
Yeah.
The irony of that name sure just gets better. John, he would talk to you, he'd tell you his thoughts. I don't think he was ever one to completely BS. He was kind of open and honest. Oh, kid, you're on the bubble, you ain't that good. Oh, well, I better work harder, or it doesn't matter. The only time we really got like kind of personal is we were both rehabbing an injury at the same time. He was rehabbing his shoulder. I was rehabbing my knee, and we were at the same facility. And it was just regular fella banter, you know, cordialities and how's this, how's that. So I really have no depth of knowledge of deviant behavior, nor do I have any animosity or ill will because he's never done anything wrong to me.
Hey, Chris, what did Teddy Long say? Do you know? Do you have the comments there? Because I know he said something, but I didn't watch it.
And if I may say, he did fire a lot of people, so there's probably a lot of people that are seeking their vengeance now, and that's life.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing too, but it's on the Sportskeeda WrestleBinge page as far as Taylor feeling that Laurinaitis is guilty, actually, very guilty, which is his thoughts. And he's been vocal around podcasts for years talking about his experience with John Laurinaitis. Taylor just didn't get along with him. So,
see, bro, I'll say this all the time. Bro, come on. There's a lot of people I probably should be burying. But I'll say this all the time, Chris, with Laurinaitis. I'll say it with Vince. I'll say it with Chris Jericho, that stuff. Bro, unless you were in the room and you saw it, you don't know. Mm-hmm. Period. You could want to believe it, bro. You could hope somebody rots in, hell. Unless you've seen it with your own two eyes, you don't know.
That's true, but I would say someone like a Tay Long who interact with with John Laurinaitis all the time. I think that his take on it is probably based on his relationship with John Laurinaitis and what he knows him to be like, and if he is a slimy individual
I worked with I worked with Laurinaitis at WCW.
Yeah, that's why it started.
And I'll tell you this, Chris. Eric Bischoff brought in Johnny Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
Okay. I never, and he was kind of, bro. Me and Bischoff were always like this, so that would have kind of made Laurinaitis Bischoff's guy. Mm-hmm. But I never had a problem with Johnny Laurinaitis, and bro, like I would bet a large amount that Eric Bischoff and John Laurinaitis would never be accused of what Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis was accused of.
Yeah.
So if Laurinaitis was working at WCW and Eric hired him. Like I said, bro, I never had an issue with the guy. I never saw, I watched him around female. You know what I'm saying? So now you got to look at the situation. Well, now you got that same guy working for Vince McMahon. Mm-hmm. Why was it different? Was it, go ahead.
The circumstances of power, I think, changed.
Yes.
He was the Finnish guy, and he would come up with really.
That's true. That's true.
That's exactly where I was going. I at first that was just kind of like an introductory role for him at Laurinaitis because he was in All Japan for so long, and that coming to WCW, that was his really first prominent executive position, so he's not trying to ruffle any feathers at all. And then he goes to WWE being Vince's left hand man essentially, and so the more he ascends in that power position, the more it starts to make his head bigger. And that's again, man, people act as if this is anything different than corporate America. I mean, this is corporate America 101. You start to go up the chain, and the more you go up the chain, the bigger your head becomes, and then you get a God complex. And I think a lot of these people, they get a God complex, and they feel like they cannot be caught. They do all these dirty things, and they have this God complex that they feel like they cannot be basically humbled or put in their place, and they'll continue to do just things that they feel like they are having this power trip, man. So Chris, I can definitely see.
Let's go to psychology again.
Sure.
Because Chris, I'm going to be honest with you, bro. Let's face it, man. As the head writer, and EC3 will tell you, as the head writer of 3 different companies,
yeah,
I had a lot of power. I was the guy deciding whether or not, you were in shows and what we were going to do with you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So what's the difference between myself and a John Laurinaitis? So in other words, I had the opportunity to do that.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to say, well, you'll get a push if I get this. I had the opportunity to do that, but I'm a guy that never in a million years, would do that. Yeah. So what's the difference of, when a person has power and the person that takes advantage of that power and the person who doesn't?
So when someone has a God complex, they have like an inflated view of their personal ability. And that oftentimes comes from an overcompensation of feeling incredibly insecure. So if someone is dealing with just an enormous amount of insecurity, you have narcissism, which the root of the narcissism is insecurity. And the God complex is like an inflated version of someone who's dealing with the narcissistic tendencies. And so if someone's insecure about themselves and they're starting to get a position of power or a position where they can be of great influence. That's the reason why, like a lot of doctors and nurses, like in the medical field, they deal with, with God complexes, like Kevorkian, for instance. He had the ability to end lives. He literally had the ability to end lives. So that person would deal with the God complex because that person has that so much power in their hands that they can literally end lives. And it's difficult to put that type of power in someone's hands when they are not emotionally available to handle it. And a lot of times when it comes to someone like a Laurinaitis, and I would even argue like a Vince McMahon, because he had a really, really tough childhood, as far as the documentaries, as far as his unstable relationship with his dad and stuff like that.
That's what I was going to ask you. Does that insecurity usually come from the childhood?
100%. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing research and trauma. Trauma is almost generational too.
Yeah,
you can inherit here.
So the thing is with Freud, Sigmund Freud, he's like the father of American psychology. He was really big on he's a weirdo. His thing was mostly built from sexual desires, id, ego, superego, right? So you have the you had the ego being the self, and then you had the id and the superego basically being like the devil and the angel, so to speak. And it was mostly revolved around sexual desires. That's the reason why you have things like the Oedipus complex that Freud came up with, which is the son having an affinity, like having a sexual affinity for the mother. Electra complex is the female having a affinity for the male. That was all Freudian thought. Then you have the art of regression, which is the reason why people get angry, because it's a step back in their age. You have like penis envy, his thought on penis envy and things like that was women are jealous of men because they don't have the phallus. That's basically what Sigmund thought when it came to sexual desires. So he would get canceled if he was at my job right now.
I got hair envy for EC3.
There you go, hair envy. So Anna, Sigmund's daughter, Anna, she came in. She didn't want to revolutionize like Sigmund's thoughts, but she came in and she was like, well, he didn't believe that children can be psychoanalyzed. Anna comes in and she's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, like what we see of them as an adult is because we should be psychoanalyzing them as a child, and is stemming from their childhood.
Yeah.
And so she came up with defense mechanisms: suppression, regression, repression, reaction formation, sublimation, things like that, of why children becoming adults, what defense mechanisms they come and they don, so to speak, of how they treat others and how their relationships are as adults. So a lot of times when there's tough childhoods, I mean, if you think about it from a psychodynamic standpoint, the first 6 or so years of your life can really shape the rest of your life. A lot of times people develop stuff because of observing. They've developed ODD, because opposites from defiant disorder, because of looking at a childhood, looking at a stormy marriage, a divorce. You keep going through schools. You keep, you break in relationships in some way. And if the father is absent, that can create such a huge sense of abandonment. And then you try to overcompensate that, which is called reaction formation. When you feel a certain way, you try to overcompensate it with the opposite thing. So if you're feeling very, very insecure, you get hyper powerful, you get hyper influential, you get hyper manipulative. And so that happens a lot within corporate America, because corporate figures who have difficult childhoods and haven't got it treated, they start to become very, very negatively influential, and they start to have that God complex and start to manipulate their employees.
So we're going to segue from Sigmund Freud to Darby Allin and Sting winning.
Oh man.
Is that what?
No psychology with
I have a quote to close that one. All right. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.